Hello, I'm Colleen Pearl, the Cool Crone, and welcome back to my channel. This is going to be your video for the full moon in Gemini. Okay, so this is the video about the full moon in Gemini. This full moon is happening on December 7th at 11:08 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which means that for the other time zones in the United States, it is happening on December 8th. And for Europe and Asia and Australia, and the East Coast of the United States, we're all getting it on December 7th. Mine is late at night. Theirs may be earlier in the day. So let's get on and talk about this full moon in Gemini. So a full moon in general has a great deal of energy, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how you use this energy. The full moon energy really begins building up, well, essentially from the new moon for the 2 weeks leading up to the full moon. But as a human being walking around on the planet, you probably are feeling this energy build up for about the last 4 days or so prior to the full moon. The reason that you feel this so keenly is because it is the timing of the sun standing across the sky from the moon. And I say about 4 days because maybe even 5, because that means that the moon will be coming into a sign or two away from the full moon sign and approaching it. And the sun will pretty much be in the same area. It may change about a degree each day. And you'll begin to feel this buildup, not necessarily of tension, but just of energy. So things will be more energetic because we become more and more emotional as the full moon creeps up. When the sun is standing right across the sky from the moon, you have full-blown solar masculine energy opposing full-blown lunar feminine energy. And this energy, the solar energy comes up over the top, the lunar energy comes up into the bottom. So we begin this cycle of energy which complements one another. But for us, in our bodies and in our minds and hearts, we begin to feel this energy. Now, moons are very emotional. Why? Because they tap into our moon energy, and moons rule our emotions and moods. So when the sun energy, which is not our emotions, but is more of our heart, our chi, our life force, is touched by this very emotional moon energy, it conjures up all sorts of feelings. So we're feeling our feelings at the time of the full moon, that's for sure. And this masculine feminine energy really embodies yin and yang energy. Now, what is the effect on us humans? The effect is that as we become more emotional, tapping into this full moon energy, no matter what sign you are, you're going to be a little more emotional at the time of the full moon. This stimulation of your emotions brings unresolved issues to the surface. And this is golden. This is the beautiful gift of the full moon, is that it gives you a chance very organically, very naturally, to figure out what your unresolved issues are and begin to deal with them. In other words, the sun literally shines a light on the little dark parts of your soul where you have little pieces that you don't want to talk about, and it gives you a chance to bring them out and deal with them. And this can be very healing. This is how you let go of negative patterns, of toxic thoughts. You talk things over with people. Maybe you go to a therapist. Maybe you just have a cup of coffee or tea with your friend. But getting those concepts, not ideas, but getting those concepts out into the open, those feelings out into the open, is the first step in curing and healing them. So it's important, and any therapist will tell you this, that you identify the issues. And this could be a trauma that you experienced. This could be a difficult relationship where it ended and you didn't have proper closure, or you don't understand what happened within the relationship and it affected you very profoundly. So any of these types of things can come to the surface during a full moon. And usually it's not all of them in our lives. But believe me, I have been dealing with a lot of shadow things over the last year. And it's kind of a never ending stream. I just feel like once I get one fixed in a few more weeks, there's more coming up to the surface that I need to fix. So it isn't like you're going to run out of these things to work on. And working on them in itself is a lesson about who you are, what your role is in the universe, why you're here, why you're on this planet. It's just a beautiful, beautiful way to learn about oneself and to further one's spiritual journey. So I just wanted to say that about the full moon energy, to go a little deeper into it. Usually I just, tell you about these things that I always have on the screen. And I just wanted to emphasize it and bring it home just a little bit more. All right. So that is what the full moon is time for. Now, let's consider that this is a full moon in Gemini. So the shadow side of Gemini's energy involves childishness, immaturity, being very flighty, changing directions, not being very committed or focused. So if something is pushing your buttons during the Gemini full moon, consider what you might have done to bring that on yourself. Were you acting a little immature? Were you behaving childishly? Were you insincere in your thoughts, speech, action? These are the kinds of things that could provoke behavior in others that then push your buttons. So once you recognize the shadow element that's brought you to this point, you can identify it, begin to move past it or to cure it or to heal it. And this can be done very much easier in the Gemini moon because Geminis are blessed with reason and logic. So having the moon in Gemini and the full moon and using this energy, it's a real opportunity for a lot of people. So what I'm saying is pay attention to this energy and use it. Be smart. Use this energy. Now, the full moon will occur at 16 degrees of Gemini, 2 minutes, as I said, on December 7th or 8th. And the sign of Gemini is actually masculine. So does that mean that all Geminis are males? No. It means that there is a definite yang energy to Gemini. Yang meaning the masculine, the solar energy, and being the more overt, the more assertive, the more aggressive energy of Gemini. It's also an air sign. Air signs are intellectual. They're somewhat detached emotionally. They're somewhat more academic in their approach to life. They're more social. They're more prone to talk about things rather than do things. Gemini is also mutable. This means that they go with the flow, they roll with it. They also, because Gemini has that quick mind and that quick learning, when they learn things, they very quickly incorporate their learning into their life, into what they're doing, into their behavior, into their relationships. So Gemini being mutable is also very, very adaptable and changeable. Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury, which is typified by changeability, but also by messaging, communications, connecting with people, and things having to do with the hands. And so that's why when Mercury goes retrograde, because the planet Mercury has to do with the hands, that's why we say, don't buy small appliances you can hold in your hands, because Mercury is going to rule that and it's going to have some effect on that. Large appliances, maybe don't buy them because there might be a contract involved and Mercury will screw that up too. But having a Gemini ruled by Mercury means that these people very often make things with their hands. All right, moving on. So, when the moon is in Gemini, we are all a little bit moon in Gemini, which means that we are going to be more changeable and restless. We're going to be more intellectual. We're going to be compelled to talk about things, to talk things through, to communicate with other people. It also means that we are going to be easily bored, that if there isn't something going on that's intellectually stimulating, we're going to be really, really bored. And also that we crave activity. Now, of the air signs, I would say that Gemini is probably the most physical. Maybe I could get some pushback on that, but I would say they're going to be the most physical because they like activity. They like getting up and going. They like seeing things. They like going places, a lot like Sagittarius. Also, when the moon is in Gemini, we are all more sociable and more adaptable, like the mutable sign of Gemini. So let's talk about this particular full moon. All moons do express emotions at a very high level, and they represent a completion of that cycle of emotion. So, when you go through healing having to do with emotional traumas or just emotional issues, usually at the full moon, that healing will be complete and you will start the new one. Often, if you incorporate both the new and the full moons in your cycles, in your devotion, you will find that there is a natural beginning of healing at the new moon and a natural culmination of the healing at the full moon, which is actually quicker because there's only about 2 weeks in between those two lunations. So, with this moon in Gemini, there will be a sense that change is in the air, that it is time for everyone to change. And astrology tells us that this energy is very lively, very spontaneous. So we might want to change spontaneously without, going through a big, huge plan or design. And that can be a good thing because obviously, when you just think of something quickly, that's a very intuitive thought. And that's usually your best thought. But for some people, especially those who struggle with impulse control, like a Sag or a Gemini, it can also be an excuse to make some pretty crazy decisions. So let's dig into that. Now, Gemini energy, as I said, is very logical, detached, unemotional, academic, cool headed. But when the Gemini native takes advanced consideration of a plan, it will be rational and detached. It will not be emotional. They don't make the kind of impulsive decisions that, say, an actual Sagittarius does, because they're not linking their emotions to that decision. It's all intellect, it's all intellectual. So, if you, under the auspices of this full moon in Gemini, if you are feeling like you're doing something, oh gosh, that just feels great, I'm just going to do it, that kind of impulse, that may not be good for you. So in that moment, please try to look at the flip side. That's Gemini duality, right? So if you can look at the flip side and see if that story is really going to play out really well for you or not, that may help you avoid some problems. So Geminis know that there's two sides to everything, or four, or six, or eight. By thinking twice and asking the right questions about our own motives, we can use the spontaneity of this Gemini full moon without risking the adverse effects. We can expect that under the full moon in Gemini, things are going to be very quick, very hectic, very sociable for those few days. Lots of comings and goings, lots of communications, lots of happenings and things going on. But the really, really important thing under moon in Gemini is that words and communication are so important. Gemini is such a communicative sign, and it's an air sign like Libra and Aquarius. So when we speak, we need to be precise about what we're saying. And if you're not practicing good impulse control, you may say something just in a sense of fun that somebody could take very badly if you're not really thinking about your words. So you do need to be sensitive to that. The Gemini moon is the least emotional of the moons, except for maybe Aquarius, but it's a good time still to have that heart-to-heart chat with a friend if you need to, either because they have something they need to discuss, or maybe you have something you need to discuss, or you just need someone to talk to. This is a great time to do that because the chat will flow, the conversation will be nice back and forth with a friend. Gemini actually rules friends, two people, two friends. And so it's a really, really good time to have a long heart-to-heart chat with your friend. Now let's find out. Now, who has a moon in Gemini? So we can see, how is this demonstrated in life? So when I look for these people who have the moons in the same sign as I'm doing the video about, I look for people who have the moon in that phase. So I'm not just looking for somebody who has a moon in Gemini. I'm looking for somebody who was born on the full moon in Gemini. And that, it makes it really, really interesting to pick from. So the person that I picked, she has a perfect full moon in Gemini, is Tina Turner. Tina Turner was born on November 26, 1939 at 10:10 p.m. Central Standard Time in Nutbush, Tennessee. She is an American-born singer and actress, as if you don't know, and she is widely considered the queen of rock and roll. She began her career with the Ike Turner's King of Rhythms in 1957. She rose to prominence as the lead singer of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue. So I guess they changed their names after a few years. The Ike and Tina Turner Revue actually broke up in 1976 when she ended her marriage to Ike Turner, and she launched her solo career. But there were a few years in there where it was a little rough going for her. Now, I happen to have actually seen Tina Turner live in Las Vegas in 1978. And at that time, she was the warm-up act for Lou Rawls. I couldn't believe that I was sitting in an audience and that what I had paid for was a Lou Rawls ticket. And what I was seeing was Tina Turner, and her show was amazing. She was magnificent. Her dancing was fantastic, and her show was jaw-dropping. In the 80s, she launched one of the biggest and greatest comebacks in music history, wildly successful, completely reinvented herself. And in 1984, she released the multi-platinum album Private Dancer, which contained the hit song What's Love Got to Do with It, for which she won a Grammy Award. At age 44, her Uranus opposition, she was the oldest female solo artist to top the Hot 100. So take that in your pipe and smoke it. Most people at 44 are having a midlife crisis. Tina Turner is topping the charts. Her chart success continued with Better Be Good to Me, Private Dancer, We Don't Need Another Hero, Typical Male, The Best, I Don't Want to Fight, and Golden Eye. Now, during her Break Every Rule world tour in 88, she set a world record for Guinness for the largest paying audience ever for a solo performer. That was at 180,000 people. And it has been broken since. But at that time, that was the record for largest paying audience. She also acted, and she did the film Tommy, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and The Last Action Hero. In 1993, there was a biopic based on her autobiography called What's Love Got to Do with It? And in 2009, she retired after completing her Tina 50th anniversary tour, which is the 15th highest grossing tour of the 2000s. She sold over 100 million records worldwide. She's one of the best-selling recording artists of all time. She's received 12 Grammys, including a Lifetime Achievement Award. She's the first Black artist and the first female to be on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, and Rolling Stone ranked her among the 100 greatest artists of all time and one of the 100 greatest singers of all time. She has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and the St. Louis Walk of Fame. She's a two-time inductee of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She's also a 2005 recipient of the Kennedy Center Honors and Woman of the Year Award. And in 2013, she moved to Switzerland, where she now resides. So in the Wikipedia listing for her, it says that she is the Swiss/American singer and actress, Tina Turner. And I looked at that and I was like, what is that about? And then I read later, way later in the article, that in 2013 she moved to Switzerland. So technically she's Swiss because she has Swiss citizenship. So that is a little bio on Tina Turner. Let's look at her chart. Now, her chart shows this beautiful Uranus in Taurus retrograde. Now, this should look familiar, folks, because this is where Uranus was just a couple of years ago, which means that Tina Turner has had her Uranus return, which is usually a big spiritual awakening in everybody's life. And it starts at 44 when you have the Uranus opposition, and now at 84, she would have the Uranus return. So good for her. Most people don't live to see that. That's amazing for her. I'm sure she's really enjoying life in Switzerland. She's probably got a boyfriend who's about 25. The moon in the 10th house here, this is somebody who is accepted by the public, loved by the public, and really enjoys being in the public eye. She's got that full moon setting here, the moon opposite the sun. The sun is conjunct Mercury. So this is a very bright woman. This is somebody who can really wrap her mind around a concept. And her sun and Mercury being in Sagittarius, she's probably a lifelong learner. So I would not be surprised if Tina Turner is off learning 5 different languages, or, doing some incredibly amazing feat with her brain, because she's really got one. And also, older Sagittarians get that sage philosopher kind of thing going on, and they just see life in a very much more philosophical way than they do in their younger years. So they really enjoy just being alive, because usually Sages live pretty hard when they're young, and they do make a lot of big, they take a lot of risks, and therefore they risk having some hard stuff happen to them in life. So when they reach a really old age, like Tina Turner has, they're very appreciative of having earned that. Her Venus is in her 5th house, so I'm guessing that she's had her fair share of love affairs. And the Mars and Lilith in the 7th house indicates the trouble with a marriage, a very abusive marriage, very difficult there, along with Pluto in the 12th, which is indicating some difficult karmic things to resolve in this lifetime. So, she does have some difficult things here. That Mars also squares her sun and Mercury. So, a lot of difficult things for her to work out here, but a tremendous life lived by Tina Turner. And so that full moon, though, very often when people are born under a full moon, they do rise to prominence. They do, because they've got that combination of solar and lunar energy working for them in their lifetime. And then, as you see, that she has all these other wonderful planetary arrangements that really put her up on top. All right, so now I'd like to talk about the full moon itself. So I'm going to go to the chart of the full moon. Here's the chart of the full moon. And we see that all the planets for this full moon are all on one side of the chart. This is the south node. This is not a planet. It's the node of the moon. This is Black Moon Lilith, also not a planet. This is a point in time calculated by the astrologers, having to do with the orbit of the moon, but it's not a planet. So all of the planets are in this 180-degree half circle. And we have a lot of amazing aspects affecting this full moon. But before I even go in to talk about the aspects, I just want to point out that the full moon in October, November, and this one in December all are at 16 degrees of their signs. So what I feel about all 3 of these full moons is that these 3 full moons are really laying the groundwork for what's going to come for us for 2023. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how things play out in 2023, and to see what other planets hit 16 degrees, especially of Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Leo, because those are the fixed signs, and our lunar eclipse was at 16 degrees of Taurus. So planets that hit that 16-degree mark in the fixed signs are going to echo back to that eclipse. But planets that hit 16 degrees of almost any other kind of sign are going to echo back to these full moons from October and December. So really interesting for astrology for 2023. Okay, so let's talk about the aspects that are happening during this full moon. So the backdrop is that Mars, Uranus are both retrograde all month. So Mars and Uranus both retrograde all month. Mercury is going to change into the sign of Capricorn on the day of the full moon. If we notice here, here's Mercury at 1 degree of Capricorn. And I did this chart actually for the 8th, because when I did it on my software for the 7th, you didn't really see the full moon exactly. The moon was still a little out of phase. So I had to do it for the 8th. So on the 7th, though, that is actually when Mercury goes into 0 degrees of Capricorn. So this is a day where a lot of things are going to come together. And I just love the way the planets are all arranged almost evenly out here across these 6 houses. It's just extraordinary to me. In this full moon, we have the Sun opposition Mars, the Sun sextile Saturn, the Sun square Neptune, the Sun trine Chiron, the Moon conjunct Mars, the Moon trine Saturn, the Moon square Neptune, the Moon sextile Chiron. We have Mercury conjunct Venus, Mercury squaring Jupiter, Venus square Jupiter, Venus square Neptune, Mars trine Saturn, Jupiter conjunct Neptune, Jupiter sextile Pluto, and Saturn square Uranus. So here's Saturn squaring Uranus. We still have that potential for martial action going on with the Saturn square Uranus. So lots and lots of aspects. In fact, there's so many. I just want to list them for you. Sun opposing Mars, Sun sextile Saturn, Sun quincunx Uranus, Sun quincunx North Node, Sun square Neptune, Sun trine Chiron, Moon conjunct Mars, Moon trine Saturn, Moon square Neptune, Moon sextile Chiron. Take a breath. And Mercury conjunct Venus, Mercury square Jupiter, Venus square Neptune, Venus quincunx Pluto, Mars trine Saturn, Jupiter conjunct Neptune, Jupiter sextile Pluto, and Saturn square Uranus. So just so many aspects. So this is going to be a very consequential full moon. We have, let me go back to the chart. We have Mars conjunct Moon is going to mean that the people are angry. The people are ready to fight. And yet Mars is retrograde, so no fighting will take place. Now, squaring, if it was a few more degrees, it would be a really strong square, but it does square Neptune. And whenever Mars is square to Neptune, there's fighting. There's a war breaking out. Something's not great here. And so as Mars, thank God Mars is retrograde, because if Mars was going forward, we got that square exact, then we would have some warlike action. So this is not great. Now, the trine with Saturn is wonderful, because that means that a contract, a treaty, an agreement, a construct of some kind may be agreed to. And we've got Venus and Mercury really close together here. So talking, negotiations, diplomacy, all that is favored there. All of that is in good contact with Jupiter. So that's going to be very helpful, but it is going to be a situation where it's us versus them. That's just the truth of it. That's just how the United States is going to see things. Let me go back to this chart for the United States. Here's the chart for the United States. So a lot of the same aspects as just the plain old moon are coming into play, but here we see that the sun is in the first house of the full moon when we lay it against the chart of the United States. This is good. The sun is representing our leader, our president, and he's strong in Sagittarius. That's a good sign. He is not going to be acting out of fear. He's going to be acting from a place of strength, which is always good. We've got Venus and Mercury going into the second house of the United States. That means that we're going to be protecting our economy, protecting our resources in general. and not squandering them. So that's very, very good. And we're going to be thinking and talking about it. It also means that we're going to be thinking and talking about issues about for women, especially economic issues for women. So that's very, very good. We've got Saturn in Aquarius coming to the end of the third house, or the end of the second house, rather, coming into the third house. That is very good for diplomacy, for treaties, for contracts, for constraints, for conserving or putting a damper on rash action. And also Saturn is widely trining Jupiter, so there's benevolence and compassion and charity there, but it is not quite trining, but almost squaring Mars. So there is going to be some tension there having to do with the way we talk to our enemies. This seventh house is all about enemies, and it's being triggered by the transiting Mars and Moon coming up to the natal Mars. So there is going to be some action, some show by our enemies of their power during this full moon, on the full moon, December 7th, December 8th. And so we are going to have to respond with strength and economic sanctions, perhaps, and also just rather than a show of force, not a show of force, but a show of diplomacy and strength. So that's what I'm seeing there. Jupiter and Neptune are down here close to the IC, which means that the confusion and the power struggles in our Congress will continue. And that's going to be that way, I predict, until January of 2023. I just don't think there's going to be any good resolutions until January. And some of the resolutions will even go into March of 2023 because that's when Pluto changes signs. So watch my Astrology 2023 video and you'll get more information about that. So now let's move on to predictions for all signs. Aries. Aries, this full moon will hit your third house. A clear head is this full moon's greatest gift to you. Always impulsive, you can now move ahead, blending your head and your instincts successfully. Use these energies to revitalize the way you lead others. If you can be clear about what you're suggesting and why, you'll find that others rally round you. Your persuasion skills are off the charts right now. Taurus. This full moon will hit your second house. This moon encourages change in the way you view your finances and resources. Remember that you have far more going for you than your bank balance. Think about your skill set and about how you could make better use of it as you move forward. There's an underused talent which could easily create extra income for you, as well as providing a lot of personal satisfaction and enjoyment. Gemini. Gemini, this is your full moon. It hits your first house. The full moon in your own sign is a mini revolution for you. It's time to stop being what you think other people want you to be and instead step into your own truth. Let out your inner playful side and lead the way with laughter and wit. Assert your own identity and refuse to be put into a box for the convenience of others. Start to tread your own path with conviction and confidence. Cancer. This full moon will hit your 12th house. You probably have more questions than answers during this moon, Cancer, since it activates your spiritual zone and your curiosity about life, spirit, and human potential. This is a great time for questioning faith or religion and for having the confidence to explore new areas of belief that appeal to you. Try meditation or divination and see just how it makes you feel. You can objectively weigh up what feels right, which is a major plus. Leo. This full moon in Gemini hits your 11th house, Leo. Too much work and not enough play? You can expect to reach a crisis point now if you've spent too long focused on work or your career and not long enough reaching out to the rest of humanity. Issues of friendship and connection are high on the agenda, and you may feel an urge to change your social circle. Run with it. There are plenty of kindred souls out there waiting to make your acquaintance. Virgo. This full moon in Gemini hits your 10th house, Virgo. It activates your career zone, so don't be surprised if you feel itchy feet and restless at work. Try to avoid making sudden decisions, but what you can do is to begin researching an alternative path that may suit you better. Separate the emotions you feel about your work from the practical necessities of how much you need to earn and how. Make logical choices about where you're heading, Virgo, and you'll do fine. Libra. This full moon falls in your ninth house. Before the influence of this full moon is over, you can expect to have changed your mind half a dozen times at least, Libra. The lunar energies encourage you to see all sides of every possible story, but that just plays into your indecisive nature. Play for time if you can, rather than making a final choice. And don't be too hard on yourself about putting this off. Your desire to question everything is healthy and positive. Scorpio. This full moon in Gemini falls in your eighth house, Scorpio. Difficult issues in intimacy or complex relationships can be clarified under the clear headed influence of this moon. This is a good time to put emotion aside, Scorpio, and to look at any relationship problems more objectively. What do you want from someone else? And what are you prepared to offer in return? Your tangled web of feelings looks less depressing when viewed under the light of the full moon. Sagittarius. This full moon falls in your seventh house, Sag, activating your relationship zone. And it's an excellent time to bring more spontaneity and fun into your love life. There's an undercurrent of devilishness here, so this could be a lot of fun. Good humor and affection are in abundance, but you may find it hard to focus on responsibilities and the serious business of love during this period. Instead, it's all about what makes you smile. Capricorn. The full moon in Gemini falls in your sixth house, Capricorn. The ability to multitask is your gift from this full moon, Capricorn. At work and at home, you're able to use this clarity of mind to get a lot done all at once and typically before breakfast. You'll probably feel a great sense of progress during this period, but it's important to take care of your mental health. Don't stress yourself out trying to achieve the impossible. Aquarius. This full moon in Gemini is in your fifth house. Creatively, the full moon in your fellow air sign, Gemini, is a joy for you, Aquarius. You'll be able to express pent up emotions through writing, art, or music now, and that will be a huge relief to you. It's a busy period in your love life, too, and it's a nice time to take a fledgling relationship up a gear. If you're single, look for someone who makes you think. Pisces. This full moon in Gemini takes place in your fourth house. The full moon in your family zone brings clarity around a controversy or a hotly debated family problem. Where you've previously been consumed by the emotion of it all, this energy allows you to objectively move everyone forward. As a parent or a caregiver, try to avoid being in too much of a hurry, however. Some things take time, and that's as it should be. Learn to embrace the time you spend with your family as a gift, not a chore. And that is all our predictions for the signs for the full moon in Gemini. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful month of December. Have a wonderful full moon. Enjoy the holiday, however you celebrate it, and I will see you next time.